It's been reported that the BBC has banned staff from attending a protest against anti-Semitism this Sunday. Now, according to the Daily Mail sources, BBC senior staff who work in news and current affairs were told that the march doesn't come under commemorative or celebratory events that they are allowed to attend. Critics claim the BBC staff, however, attended recent pro-Palestinian protests. So, is there a double standard here? Are the BBC right to ban staff from protests against anti-Semitism? With me now in the studio is former BBC chief political correspondent John Sergeant and author and broadcaster Emma Woolf. Emma, I'll start with you on this. The suspicion here, the allegation, I suppose, is that staff of the BBC went on the pro-Palestine marches and not a lot was done about that. But if you wanted to go on the campaign against anti-Semitism march, then you've basically been banned. How do you feel about that?
You couldn't make this up. I mean, the BBC have mishandled the Israeli-Gaza situation from the beginning. Patrick, it's almost like they've employed someone to mishandle this. Do you remember the very start of it? A few days after that, we were discussing it, their refusal to call to Hamas terrorists, which just seemed completely sort of outrageous to most people. To this, what is controversial about a march on Sunday? It's not even a march, it's a show from the British public to show the Jewish community that they're safe here, that we value them, that we want them, that they're part of our country. It's a show of you know, opposition to anti-Semitism. It's not a demo, it's not a rally. It will be peaceful. It won't kick off. The BBC had no problem with lots of their staff going on pro-Palestinian marches, whether or not you think they were hate-filled or not, whatever you think of those marches. What is controversial about Sunday's march?
OK, John?
I think you'll find that really it's much simpler than that. If you, as I did, I worked for the BBC News division for 30 years, we had all sorts of feelings. Before, when I was a student, I would go on demonstrations. But the idea, as a member of the BBC News staff, I would go on controversial demonstrations of any kind, or marches, or any sort of obvious indication as to what my feelings were about all sorts of issues. Now you have a responsibility. You work for the BBC. It's not a matter of...
Are you saying... Sorry, but...
No, can I just finish the point? It's not a matter of just saying, oh, well, I have freedom of speech. I'm a citizen. I can do what I like. No, you work for the BBC. The BBC has perfectly clear rules about demonstrations and not getting involved in controversial affairs. This will be controversial. I'm sorry, but it will be.
OK. Are you saying, firstly, that none of those journalists, those senior news reporters, would have gone on pro-Palestinian marches?
I don't know. I mean, I left the BBC 20 years ago, so, you know, I could certainly go on these demonstrations. It's not a matter of purdah, but if you work for an organisation that works in these very controversial areas, and remember, all the people I'm talking...
John, what is controversial?
No, look, the people that I know, the people I worked with for so many years, we spent our days dealing with controversy. So
what is controversial about standing against anti-Semitism?
No, I don't want to be sort of sarcastic, but there's a very controversial series of incidents that's happening in the Middle East at the moment. The BBC is trying to report those fairly and truthfully. Now, you may say, oh, they're not, or why aren't they doing this, or why aren't they just shouting, this is a terrorist regime, or why aren't they making a judgment?
Okay.
The BBC is an international news organisation. It has half a billion listeners and viewers across the world.
Yeah.
The BBC is not you and me or a government or a member of a political party or a writer or an author. No, the BBC is a news organisation trying to be...
The BBC state that opposition to racism is a fundamental democratic principle. So in this case, opposition to anti-Semitism, if racism is wrong, then what is wrong with standing against anti-Semitism? There's nothing controversial. And why, John?
Listen.
No, but don't laugh. Why? You tell me, why is Gary Lineker, one of their star presenters...
This is an important point, actually.
Why is Gary Lineker, one of their star presenters, allowed to express his views on all of these issues? He endorsed a video which claimed that Israel are engaged in textbook genocide.
Yeah.
If that's not controversial, Tell me what is.
Sure. Well, as far as I know, Carrie Lineker doesn't work for the news division, which is where I work. The difference between me and him is quite considerable. I met him recently, and I said, I do hope when this row is over that you cannot claim victory. So my view on Carrie Lineker is perfectly clear what he should be doing. He should not be involved in controversial activities. That's I don't have any doubt about that at all. As far as the members of the staff who are working night and day on news bulletins, some of them risking their lives to get the news back, don't tell me, A, that they don't realise that this is controversial, because of course it's controversial. All these issues at the moment are very high-level, controversial activities. You may think, oh, people just wander down the street shouting. That's not controversy, that's people expressing their view.
You didn't say that at all.
Well, you can say that about all sorts of things. If you work for the BBC staff, you have certain obvious obligations, that's all. Carry them out.
OK, go on, Emma.
No, the march on Sunday is not about that. It's not about the controversy. It's not about that. It's not about taking sides. I agree with you. It's an incredibly difficult, complex debate, and many of us feel very, very split. This is not a controversial... No, this march is not
so it's
about taking sides. It's about standing with our Jewish brothers and sisters on Sunday.
Well, don't accuse me of being anti-Semitic.
It's not about you, John.
No, but
it's not about you.
But the point is...
Keep bringing it back to you.
That is not the issue. If I was still back on the BBC staff, I wouldn't have any doubts at all. I would not go on a demonstration and march over a very controversial subject.
To show solidarity with our Jewish friends and neighbours.
So by that metric then, John, if the BBC finds out that members of its news staff, whether that's production staff or presenters or whatever, attended any of the ceasefire marches or pro-Palestine marches in recent weeks, not in a news capacity, just as an individual, should they be disciplined?
They should, well, they should certainly be... The matter should be discussed. What were they doing? Where was the march? What were they saying?
What were they doing?
No, but these people, at the moment, they've asked their BBC... the bosses in the BBC, they've asked their permission. Well, the BBC bosses have then got to give their permission or explain what the position is. They've explained their position. If they're not just free people who wander around. If you work for the Bank of England, you don't go on marches about interest rates. You know, there are lots of...
It's a bit more... Look, I take your point, but it's a little bit more...
How sad that you can't go on a march to show solidarity with our Jewish friends and neighbours. That's all it is.
For 30 years, I obeyed these rules as strictly as I could to the honour and goodness of the BBC.